Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA Reddit stories. In today's Ripestories video, if a neighborhood HOA dictator threatened to tow your entire livelihood from your private property, would you back down or would you find the ultimate payback? When my HOA president tried to run me out of the community, I used his exact words against him in a way he never saw coming. Let's dive right into the video to find out what happened. And the first one is from r/OhNoConsequences and is titled HOA fined me for street parking, so I gave them a Semitruck surprise. So I have been an independent owner-operator truck driver for nearly a decade. I own a rig, a bright red sleeper cab that I use for cross-country hauls, and most weeks I am out on the highway moving goods from state to state, and when I come home between jobs, I usually drop my 53-foot trailer at a secured commercial storage lot on the industrial side of town, and that yard is like 20 miles away from my house, so driving back and forth in my personal car every single time is a hassle, but I manage. A few years ago, my wife and I bought a house in a subdivision, and it had a nice two-story layout, decent lawn space, and a standard attached two-car garage. At the time of the purchase, we knew there was a homeowner association, but the rules seem fairly standard on paper. Keep your yard mowed, don't paint your house neon purple, and don't leave rusted junk cars sitting on the grass. Standard neighborhood stuff, or so I thought. The real problem, though, was the HOA president. He lived 3 houses down from us on the corner, and he was an older guy with way too much free time on his hands and an obsession with controlling absolutely everything in the neighborhood. He spent his mornings walking up and down the sidewalks looking for anything he could complain about. A trash can left at the curb 2 hours past collection, an oil drop on a driveway, or grass half an inch too tall would already result in a violation note taped to someone's front door. My work schedule meant that every couple of weeks I would bring just my bobtail cab, the truck without any trailer attached, home for a single night. I would basically park it along the curb in front of my own house on a Friday evening, pack my bags, sleep in my own bed, check my tire pressure on Saturday morning, and then head right back out. The street was wide, my truck was parked legally under city traffic laws, and I never blocked anyone's driveway. That did not stop the HOA president from losing his mind, though. The first time I parked at the curb, I woke up the next morning to find a neon orange violation sticker stuck directly onto the driver's side window of my truck. The adhesive was brutal to scrape off, and the note cited an unauthorized commercial vehicle parked on a residential roadway and assessed a $50 fine. I walked over to his house to explain the situation reasonably. I knocked on his door, and when he answered, he looked at me like I had dragged mud across his living room carpet. "Look, I only bring the truck here once or twice a month so I can load my gear," I told him. "I don't keep a trailer here, and I park it right in front of my own property." The president crossed his arms though and sneered at me. "I don't care about your personal schedule. This is an upscale residential community, not a truck stop. Large commercial rigs bring down property values and ruin the aesthetic of the neighborhood. The rule says no commercial vehicles on the street. Move it immediately, or I will call a heavy-duty wrecker and have it impounded at your expense." I pointed out that other neighbors had large work vans and pickup trucks parked outside too, but he said, "Those are personal utility vehicles. Your rig is an industrial eyesore. If I see it parked out on the asphalt again, the fines will double every single day. Read the association rules before you come crying to me." He shut the door in my face. I paid the $50 fine, because honestly fighting an initial citation was more trouble than it was even worth, but his arrogance left a sour taste in my mouth. I decided to pull up the complete document of our association rules and local municipal codes to see exactly what kind of power he actually had. I sat down at my kitchen table and read every single page of the neighborhood covenants, conditions, and restrictions, and the rule regarding parking was very specific in its wording. Section 4, paragraph B stated, "No commercial vehicles, tractor units, or machinery exceeding 2.5 tons may be parked on neighborhood streets or left unattended on open driveways overnight." However, right underneath that section, the rules outlined private garage storage as well. And that one explicitly stated that homeowners could park any vehicle they personally owned inside their private garage structure, provided the vehicle was fully contained within the property line and didn't obstruct public pedestrian pathways or municipal utility access. The city ordinances matched this exact logic too. On private property, as long as a vehicle didn't cross the public sidewalk or violate structural safety codes, the city had zero restrictions on private garage parking as well. So I went out to my garage with a heavy-duty tape measure. My garage was a standard 2-car design, but because our house was built on a slight elevation, the builder had constructed high ceilings and an extended bay depth on the left side. My sleeper cab was tall, but the air suspension had a dump valve that lowered the rear chassis by several inches, and the cab itself was not that long from front bumper to rear mud flaps. I realized that if I backed the truck into the garage rear first, it could fit all the way into the garage bay. The front hood and bumper would sit right at the threshold of the open garage door on my concrete driveway, well behind the public sidewalk, so it would be legal. It would not touch the street, it would not sit unattended on an open driveway, and it would not block a single inch of public right-of-way. It was completely within the letter of all the rules. The following weekend, I spent half of my Saturday clearing out the left side of my garage. I relocated my storage shelves, moved my lawnmower to the backyard shed, and swept the concrete clean. Later that evening, after dropping my trailer at the commercial lot, I drove my truck into the neighborhood. I pulled past my driveway, put the truck in reverse, and carefully backed the rig straight into my garage bay, and the truck fit like a glove. The high sleeper roof cleared the open garage door tracks with inches to spare, and the rear drive wheels rested firmly on the interior concrete floor. The front chrome bumper and grille extended out past the garage opening onto my driveway, stopping 4 feet short of the sidewalk. It was entirely on my private property, securely parked and breaking zero rules. But of course, it looked utterly ridiculous. A giant red semi-truck cab sitting tucked inside a standard suburban garage looked like something out of a cartoon, but it was completely compliant with every single word written in the neighborhood rulebook. The next morning, I was sitting in my kitchen eating breakfast when I heard furious knocking on my front door. I opened it to find the HOA president standing on my porch. His face was bright red, his fists were clenched at his sides, and he was breathing heavily. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" he yelled, pointing towards my garage. "Are you out of your mind?" "Good morning to you too," I said. "Is there an issue?" "You know damn well what the issue is," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You got a commercial truck shoved into your garage. It looks atrocious. The whole street can see it. I told you that commercial vehicles are banned in this community." I leaned against the door frame and smiled at him. "Well, actually, I read the association rules very carefully, just like you told me to, and the rules say no commercial vehicles parked on the street and no commercial vehicles left unattended on open driveways overnight. My truck, though, is parked inside my private garage on my private property. The front wheels are on my driveway, 4 feet behind the public sidewalk. There's no rule against parking a vehicle in my own garage, is there?" "That rule was written for regular cars, not multi-ton industrial machines," he screamed, stepping closer to me. "You're violating the spirit of the community. I will fine you $500 for this. I will have the board revoke your privileges." "You can write whatever you want," I replied. "The bylaws do not define vehicle types for private garages. If you try to fine me for parking inside my own garage, I will have a lawyer review the citation against the association covenants and the board will end up paying my legal fees. Have a nice day." I closed the front door before he could say another word. Looking out the window, I watched him stand on my walkway for a full minute, shaking with anger before storming off towards his house. 2 days later, I received an official fine notice in the mail for $500 citing unauthorized visual nuisance and commercial presence. I immediately responded by mailing a formal certified letter to the association board quoting Section 4, Paragraph B word for word, alongside clear photographs showing the truck parked inside the garage boundaries without even crossing the sidewalk. I also attached the relevant city property codes and stated that any attempt to enforce non-existent rules on private property would be met with legal action against the board for harassment. And well, what can I say? By the end of the week, the HOA treasurer sent a written confirmation that my fine was dismissed. The board recognized my truck was parked on private property within the legal wording of the bylaws, and they had no grounds to issue a citation. The president was furious, and over the next few weeks, every time I brought my truck home for a night and parked it in the garage, I would see him driving past my house at like 5 miles per hour, glaring out of his car window. Other neighbors on the street actually thought it was hilarious. 2 of the guys living across from me came over to take photos of the truck sitting in the garage, laughing about how well I had outsmarted the president's petty rules. I guess the president couldn't accept that he had lost. His authority had been challenged and his fine had been overturned, and every time he looked down the street, my big red truck was there to remind him of it. And yeah guys, that is how you win against an HOA. Either way, the next one is titled r/malicious compliance. I am a renter? Okay, understood. So let's start with some context. My mom and I moved into my grandma's house when I was 5 and my godmother already lived with my grandma, so she was also kind of part of the household. Firstly, my aunt has never done anything with her life. She liked to say that she had to take care of my grandma, but my grandma was a feisty old Mexican lady who happily handled everything herself all the way until she got cancer in her very last year of life, and she used my grandma as a crutch to never get a job or really any source of income ever. My mom and grandma paid for this house every year and kept it up and running. Fast forward to me being 22, my mom died of cancer. We knew my grandma would not be able to afford the house herself, so my wife and I stood to help because we felt bad leaving right after my mom died. So for 2 or 3 years we handled the house taxes, the electricity bill, and when the air conditioner broke we paid to fix that, and I also gave my grandma my old car when I got a new one, so my aunt could take her to her doctor appointments and whatnot. I did all of this because I was taught to be there for my family by my mom. After those 2 to 3 years, my grandma died, so now it was only our income and my aunt needing to be supported by us. Again, this is how I was taught family takes care of each other, and we felt bad leaving my aunt after my grandma died, so we stayed again, bought food for her, cooked for her, I even handled all the dishes and house cleaning, and I mowed the lawn, I handled any insect issues the house was having, and even gave her our recyclables so she could have at least a little money for stuff. So it finally gets to a point where I confront her and say, look, my mom helped pay for this house and now I am too. My wife and I want to help you. Notice I said help and not take the house away from you and make the house nice again. We want to get a new carpet, fix the broken windows, etc. For this though, we need you to co-own the house with us. We are not going to put our money into it just for you to then sell it and we end up screwed over. Or also, if you just happen to die young, the house would just go to the bank. That's a whole other long story, but it's what will happen basically. But she of course said no, but only because she wants the house to herself and I'm her ownership. She is very greedy and selfish like that about everything, so we end up arguing and I say, how about we stayed because we cared and wanted to help. We want to continue helping, however, we cannot just blindly funnel money into your home when we need to make sure our living situation is secure. During said argument, I say how we've been nothing but caring and don't want to take the house, we just want to work with her, but again, no, so I start to get frustrated and I say, how can you be like this to me, especially when both my mom and I have paid for this house, we put more into than she ever has. I don't feel owed, but I feel that us working together and owning the house together would be fair since she doesn't even pay for any of it. I said how we stayed after grandma died to help her, and her exact words were, well, you should have just left. That hurt a lot because all that was just for nothing, not even any appreciation. Fast forward to another argument and I bring up how I feel it was wrong of her to take advantage of my mom the way she did. There's way more context to that than above, but again, whole other long story. When I say I think it was wrong, her words were, well, take it up with your mom. That broke me because I was super close to my mom and she had only been dead for like 2 years, so it was still very painful and that was my breaking point. I could not help somebody this selfish and hurtful. I told her that was awful of her to say that this house is ours just as much as it is hers, and she said, Christian, you guys are renters. Cue malicious compliance. I say, oh, we are renters? Okay then. So I started going by doing exactly what me and my grandma agreed upon when we moved in. I paid the electric bill and the house taxes, and that's it. Mowing the lawn? Sorry, that was not part of my lease. Handling the insect infestation? Nope, the landlord's issue. Cleaning your dishes and the 800 pictures you have on the walls that are filled with dust? Yeah, that is not really my problem. My wife and I care for ourselves now, and her house is going more and more to ruin. Windows have broken more, the air conditioning broke again, the shower broke, water heater broke and damaged the living room and walls, and termites in all the wood. All not my problems though. My wife and I are currently in the process of finding a place and moving out. We might not even tell her when we do move and just up and leave, letting her sit in her own filth. I mean, it's not in my lease that I need to give a notice, right? Edit, thank you all so much for the support. I still get that guilty feeling though when I leave, but I need to realize here that it's just a parasite trying to keep me as her host. Edit, for everybody giving advice about taking ownership, well, I have looked into it somewhat. With adverse possession, I have everything I'd need except one part of it, which is I'd need a paper that shows I had unreasonable doubt to believe it is in fact my house, and she would have to give me a lease or a paper showing she put me on the house, even if she just forged it in order to be able to actually get the adverse possession. She would rather die to the plague than utter the words, "It's your house too." I will possibly reach out to a lawyer, though, to see what we can do. We had mail come one time as well that was to the homeowner, but one of my uncle's names was on it, so I'm gonna go to City Hall when I'm paid to buy a copy of the current title or whatever, so I can see who is actually on it. Added to the story, so she asked me about 2 weeks ago if I could give her $480 to help with the house insurance, and I said I don't have it. She later asked my wife, and my wife is a very helpful woman. She told my aunt that if my aunt applies for government assistance, actually takes part in cleaning her part and is generally helpful, then she would give it to her. Aunt texted wife last night though saying, "I don't want to apply for assistance right now. Does this mean you're not giving me the money?" Absolutely infuriating. Edit, so as far as the title on the house, here is the story. Back in 2000, our city was declaring the house almost like a historical landmark because the house had been in the city for so many years. It was very beat up though, so they offered to literally rebuild it from the ground up. They knocked down the old one and put up the new, so apparently the agreement with the city is after the current title holders die or sell or whatever, they own the house. If she sells, she has to pay what she owes the city first, which with zero income, she can already do. Now, I don't know all the details on this, so I'm unsure how true it is. However, it does make me want to deal with it even less, because if I get a lawyer and go through all these hoops just for them to say, nope, it's the city's, then it was all pointless. And now the final update to the story. It goes like this. We did it. We found a great apartment and moved out while she was asleep. Left my keys on the counter with a note, lease terminated. Fast forward 6 months, without us paying the taxes or fixing the plumbing or doing anything, the city finally condemned the property. She tried to sell, but remember that city agreement? Yep, she owed them way more than the house was worth. The parasite walked away with absolutely nothing and had to move into a tiny government-assisted facility. My amazing wife and I are finally at peace. And the next one is a funny petty revenge story, which is titled Karen vs. Karen in the Library. So I've given up and I'm embracing the obnoxiousness of my name in meme, but declaring myself to be a little K Karen, an entirely different species. So I was in my hometown this weekend and drove past a branch library where I misspent so much of my youth. Reminded me of this story. I very rarely had to go to downtown to the mothership library, 5 stories, almost a city block, but that day I was in the main reading room doing some research. As per usual, the room had quite a few homeless people, all mostly keeping to themselves and enjoying the aircon. It was just brutally hot that day. There were several rows of rectangular tables, each with 6 chairs, giving folks plenty of room to spread out. But suddenly I hear this plop. An armload of magazines slams down on the table across from me. Karen sits down and only then asks if she can share the table because she doesn't want to sit near homeless people. I don't recall the exact words, but she was not trying to be tactful at all nor quiet. Several occupied tables were in earshot. She sits there for about 25 minutes and just never shuts up. She has the magazines, cooking magazines, strewn all over the table. She wants to talk about recipes. She wants to profess her love for some grocery store she used to visit back home that makes Publix look like crap. And she wants to talk about what a nasty city this is. And of course she really wants to talk about how the library is being ruined by vagrants and bums, and they should not be allowed inside. I was doing my best to just and instead of actually answering her, hoping she would just shut up. My simmering dislike of her went up to boiling hatred though, when she started tearing recipes out of the magazines. I finally looked her right in the eye and told her to just stop. She started to sputter and I said, "Geez, just take pictures with your phone." She vibrates in place for about 20 seconds and then decides my behavior is too offensive to endure, so she slams her stuff together, leaving the half-destroyed magazines in a messy pile and thus the flounce and bounce. As she's walking away, I see a notebook she left on the table. I think about it for a minute, then pick it up, run after her, and give it to her. In a very sweet tone I said, "You forgot this," and she had to pretend to be thankful. Pretty lame, right? But wait, there's more. So what you need to know about this library was that parking was in a giant garage about a block and a half away, and library patrons could park there for like 3 hours free with a validation slip from the library. You handed them your ticket at the reference desk and they would staple the slip to it. No slip? Well, you paid the hourly rate indicated by your time, the punch ticket. It was like $2.50 an hour. No ticket though? Well, you had to pay the daily rate, which at that time was about $20. So when I picked Karen's notebook up, I could see the little ticket sticking out of the top with the slip stapled to it, and when I handed Karen her notebook, well, jolly gosh, where did that ticket go? Shame on me. Hope you had a 20 in that giant purse, Karen. And the next one is another petty revenge story. This one is titled Google Rewards for My Bathroom Breaks. So a long time ago, I received a $50 bonus of Google reward points for buying a smartwatch as part of a promo. Unbeknownst to me, there was an expiry date on these points that apparently hit faster than regular points, and I received no email or notification about the expiration, and to my disappointment when I eventually got to the Play Store to buy some books, my points were all gone. My appeals to Google fell on deaf ears and they refused to reinstate my points even though I reached out only a few days after the expiry date. I then vowed never to use the rewards app again and cancelled my Google One account. However, I started getting reward surveys regarding a particular store that is located in the same building I work at. It happens to be next to the bathroom where I take my daily crap, and I don't know if it's a glitch, but every day for the last year or so, I've received a survey about me entering that store, and if I bought anything, technically I have to enter the edge of the store to get to the bathroom, so I say yes, entered but didn't make a purchase. And every day I get the same survey and I give the same answer, and every time I answer I get like 24 cents. It's been about 10 months, but a daily survey for taking a poop has finally netted me my $50 that they erased from my account. Celebrate with me as I buy some hard-earned books. And yeah guys, thanks for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.